Hey everyone, and good evening, good day. Welcome to Simple Minds, Good Vibrations. This is the one of the last events we're going to run for Change Fest. And if you're here, I hope you've had a fantastic time. If you've seen any of the other webinars we've done, some fantastic topics and some really great speakers. So tonight is all about music, really, how it affects us, what we can do about it, how we can change it, how we can change the way we feel about it, and how it motivates us. So let's crack right on. I'm going to get rid of myself. So if you do have any questions along the way, please chuck them in the chat box and we'll get through them as we go along. Okay. So, welcome. As I said, I'm Simon Walker. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and coach from Firecracker Coaching. I'm also an NLP master practitioner, and I help people deal with a multitude of personal issues, midlife crisis control, stress management, anxiety, as well as personal development strategies for career development or even complete changes in career. I'm used to working with senior managers and large teams in IT companies in a variety of different sectors. And I came to a point where I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt the job I was doing was leaving me really just fall short of my potential somehow. I had a fascination in the way people thought. And I found that if I understood this, even if they didn't, then I could help people with their blocks and help them to perform at a much higher level in their jobs. And I'm proud to say that wherever I stayed, whether it was 6 months or 6 years, I always left it better than I found it. Now, I know these tips work because I use them every day to change my states and get myself focused, get myself motivated, relaxed, and de-stressed. At the end of this session, there's going to be a link to my playlist of suggested tracks and good examples of the kind of tracks that you can use. I've been fortunate enough to work in the past with some fantastic clients who have seen incredible change, and seeing the look in someone's eyes when they find their passion is what gets me out of bed in the morning. And one of my favorite mantras is, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction. So let's crack on. Today we're going to look at what music is, where it came from, what it does to us, and how we can use it. Hey, Gary, how you doing? Good evening. And how we can use it in our everyday lives to change the way we feel. Gary, good. So music is a tool to help us focus, bring us out of the depths of depression, motivate us, make us happy, make us sad, and every other emotion in between. It touches us every day, and even if we don't have the ability to hear, we can still speak to us in languages we don't even need to understand. So we're going to see where it began, why we need it, what it does to us, and most importantly, how we can use it to change our minds. The Oxford English Dictionary definition of music is vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. Now, isn't that just one of the most beautiful definitions you've ever heard? And Plato said, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. That's just beautiful. So we may think of it as an art form of cultural definition, but as we'll find out, it's much more than this. So how old is music? 10,000 years? 20,000 years? Well, the story of music is the story of humanity itself. Archaeologists have found evidence that our ancestors of 40,000 years ago used music to communicate before the invention of language. It was the method and means in the late Neanderthal era for social interaction and tribal communication. There was a change in humanity at this time, and with the emerging success of Homo sapiens over Neanderthal, the landscape was changing for humanity. And rather than scratching on walls, humans were now painting on walls. They were even etching bones and carving flutes. And it is thought that the increase in importance of music and art led to greater social bonding and information that could be passed on about where to hunt and instructions on how to do it. The Neanderthals have been given a bad press relating to their intelligence, and it is now theorized that their cognitive abilities were comparable to Homo sapiens at the time. They were simply outpopulated and didn't die out, but were merged into the more dominant Homo sapiens species at the time. And if you look in the mirror, you'll see the result of that staring back at you. However, with the finding of cave paintings and cave painting tools dating back 100,000 years, there is a strong argument that our musical ancestors do indeed go further back to this time and didn't simply arrive playing flutes at 40,000 years ago. It is conceivable that early ancestors mimicked animal calls, would beat warnings out to the tribe who were now mainly ground dwelling and would need protection. That being in a tribe was important for survival, and being part of a successful tribe was even more important to reproduction and survival of the species. And that being said, the earliest musical instrument we can know for sure is still around today, the human voice. A remains of this vocal evidence has been found and can be dated back to around 530,000 years ago, when our voice boxes descended to the back of our throat, giving early man certainly the ability to make sounds to communicate. We see this in archaeological digs, where the change of shape of skull and a small number of these bone fragments have been found today, so we know the evidence is there. So we had the ability. Then why would we use it? Well, animals find a mate by talking to each other, and we still do this today. So it's likely that our ancestors did this almost 500,000 years ago. We are social creatures and we are community creatures. There is safety in numbers after all. Therefore, we evolved the idea of communication. There is also the theory that because human babies are generally weak from birth, they cannot cling on to their mothers, unlike chimpanzee babies, for example. Mothers would have to put babies down in order to perform tasks. Now, the need for a mother to tell her child she is safe and still around to protect it is theorized as one of the earliest forms of language, possibly the earliest forms of singing. And as we'll see, singing does strange and wonderful things to our body. One of the main benefits is social connection. Music was definitely used to enhance the community and our early ancestors. And if you think about it, how different are early religious or spiritual gatherings to a concert of today? There's a stage, much like an altar. The priest, vicar, or other religious dignitary stands at the front and preaches to the community gathered there. There's a sense of togetherness and community being generated. And if you think back to a time of tribal days, a united tribe together is a safe and powerful community. The oldest known recording tune is carved onto Sumerian clay tablets found in modern day Syria, dating back almost 4,000 years. And what is fascinating is that on these tablets were also instructions on how to tune the instrument, which would have been a lyre. The agreed upon earliest song is called Hurrian Hymn Number 6, which is an ode to the goddess Nikal. It was composed in cuneiform, an early Sumerian script, by the ancient Hurrians sometime around 14th century BC. And much like our religious gatherings of today, we gathered and gave thanks to the deities that were worshipped at the time. And we have used music for celebrations of all kinds, whether we are sad or glad. We use music to express our emotions. We use it in our community in a way to express feelings of happiness and sadness, such as at weddings and funerals. And one song at a wedding or funeral can mean a lifetime of emotion. I mean, for me personally, I still can't hear Guide Me, O Thou Great Redeemer or Bring Him Home from Les Miserables without being completely choked up. And likewise, I think Come On Eileen has been played at every wedding I've ever attended. And as you'd expect, it all starts when we're a baby. Singing to a baby, in fact, singing to anyone, releases the chemical oxytocin. Now, this is important for social connection and is often called the cuddle hormone, as it encourages bonding and contact. And you know that listening to music actually makes you smarter? Well, when we listen to music, our brain activity increases hugely. Also, if you play an instrument, the brain increases activity, and there is a significant increase in nerve bundles on the left part of the brain in people who play music. They found a significant increase in the reasoning and logic abilities of children who play an instrument over those who don't. This activity, resulting in increase in visual, auditory, and motor skills, is now also used to treat neurological disorders for this very reason. Music really does have healing powers. Now, there are also two types of emotion directly relating to music: perceived emotion and felt emotion. And just because music is perceived as sad, it doesn't mean it makes you sad. However, if you have a felt emotion or in a sad piece of music, then you will manifest the sadness in a physiological way. Also, sad music, particularly minor scales, as deemed by a Western ear, does not necessarily mean sad in another culture. The Eastern musical scale of cultural music, particularly found in China and India, has a different range of notes that are not necessarily related to a Western minor scale, and hence would have no sadness associated. It is another scale altogether that denotes sadness in cultural musics for those areas. And music has been used to treat many illnesses, and one theory even introduces something called the Mozart effect. A study that builds on the theory found that the infamous composer's piano sonata in D major has led to decreased epilepsy in patients, a finding that even extended to patients in comas. And interestingly, if you want to increase your sex drive, well, urologist Y. Mark Hong said that music and sex are alike, in that they both can be emotionally charged experiences. Therefore, it's been researched and possible that music can help men with low testosterone to up their sex drives. He found that men who listened to music had elevated serotonin levels in the body. Now, serotonin is not only responsible for regulating sex drive, but also emotions, depression, and neurological balances in the body. It's the reason it's called the happy hormone. According to the National Center for Biotechnical Information, research has shown that music may influence central physiological variables like blood pressure, heart rate, respiration, body temperature, and galvanic skin response. The music also influences the immune and endocrine systems, the chemical messenger system throughout our body. The existing research shows a growing knowledge of how music can relieve pain, anxiety, nausea, fatigue, and depression. Now, traditionally, music has been linked to the treatment of mental illness and has been used successfully to treat anxiety and depression and improve function in schizophrenia and autism. In clinical medicine, several studies have shown pain and anxiety reducing properties that have been used in intensive care units. Music has successfully been used both in diagnostic procedures like gastroscopy and in larger operations, in preoperative as well as post-operative phases, reducing the need for medication in several studies. The combination of music with guided imagery and deep relaxation has shown reduction in symptoms and increased well-being in chronic pain syndromes, whether from cancer or rheumatic origin. Music has been used to support in pregnancy and gestation, in internal medicine, oncology, pediatrics, and other related fields. The use of music with geriatric patients is now proving to be especially useful. Studies have shown that music can improve neurological function and alleviate symptoms in stroke rehabilitation, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and other forms of dementia. Dr. Laura Mosqueda, Director of Geriatrics of the University of California, states that because music affects so many areas of the brain, It stimulates pathways that may still be healthy. The role of music in medicine is primarily supportive and palliative. However, it should be further researched, not just for its direct health benefits, but also because we all resonate with music. It's inexpensive and, last I heard, had very few side effects. So how does the magic of Mozart and the passion of Rachmaninoff happen, though? How is this actually translated from what is literally sound waves in the air to chemical changes in our bodies? How do these mechanisms translate sound waves, and what happens if these mechanisms aren't accessible? Well, Beethoven was deaf, and it almost destroyed him. Music was his life and living, so to go deaf was the ultimate insult. He had lost 60% of his hearing at the age of 31, and by the age of 46 was completely deaf. However, he learned that if he lay on the floor, he could feel and sense the vibrations of the music and continue composing arguably some of his best work. His last 5 piano sonatas, Missa Solemnis, the Ninth Symphony with its choral finale, and the last 5 string quartets, all composed whilst completely deaf. Dame Evelyn Glennie, the Scottish virtuoso percussionist, has been profoundly deaf since the age of 12, but it didn't stop her having an amazing career. And also Rick Allen, the drummer from the band Def Leppard, was involved in a car accident, meaning his left arm had to be amputated. And whilst recovering in hospital, he could have thought it was the end of his career, but instead he set about designing his own drum kit, especially for a one-armed drummer. There are countless stories of musicians overcoming the odds, and in spite of them, music still finds a way out, and we still need that strong connection with music no matter what. We know that music is integral to sensory learning and enjoyment. For those with learning difficulties, it is an awakening. If you've ever seen a sound space in full use, you will know how rewarding and connecting it can be for those with learning difficulties. So music is ultimately vibrations and energy. Our body takes in these vibrations, which are processed through our auditory cortex, and this only really notices pitch and volume. It works in conjunction with the cerebellum to interpret pitch further, as well as timbre, spatial location, and length. And the cerebellum at the same time has connections with the amygdala, which is responsible for emotional reasoning, and the frontal lobe, which determines impulse control. The mesolimbic system is also processing vibrations, and it is responsible for arousal, pleasure, and the release of those neurotransmitters such as dopamine. Now, the dopamine rush, that chill you get, that maybe multiplying, is the exact same reason and same reaction produced when experiencing sexual encounters. Now, this feeling grows and is being produced in the caudate area of the brain, which starts creating an anticipatory response up to 15 seconds before the actual emotional climax of the song. Now, this anticipation is used to great effect by composers who will prolong the climactic element of a song. And we may think of this in songs with incredible choruses to the verse. Think about Thriller by Michael Jackson or Hit Me Baby One More Time by Britney Spears, and you've got it. However, this has been utilized by composers of all eras, even back to classical pieces from Bach and Mozart. Even operas started with an overture, which is often a medley of pieces throughout the opera. So composers have a habit of taking us on this emotional journey, layering our emotions into their music, and this continues up to present day. I can't hear Satie's Gymnopédie without instantly relaxing, or Jules Holland's Beetroot without wanting to get up and dance, and I know I'm not the only one. Music really does have an immense amount of magic to it. So that's the physiology, but it doesn't do justice to the immense pleasure that music provides and is interpreted as. It's like telling me a rainbow is just refracted light through raindrops, or the northern lights are just solar radiation hitting the atmosphere. It's still one of the most magical and majestic visual experiences. Now, studies have shown that singing can improve the brain functionality of the elderly, suffering such conditions as aphasia and Parkinson's disease. Dr. Jerry Salomon of Samaritan House Medical Center in Medical Clinic in San Mateo says, in addition, many of the elderly seniors live alone, are limited in mobility due to chronic conditions such as arthritis, and are on budgets. Therefore, finding easy and affordable activities that keep them engaged and connected is beneficial for their emotional well-being. As Salomon also wrote, that singing has also been found to improve the respiration health and functionality of patients with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and that patients with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease who sing report less feelings of breathlessness. And research proves as well that when you listen to music you like, your brain releases dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter. And Valerie Salimpour, a neuroscientist at McGill University, injected 8 music lovers with a radioactive substance that binds to dopamine receptors after they listened to their favorite music. A PET scan showed that large amounts of dopamine were released, which biologically caused the participants to feel emotions like happiness, excitement, and joy. And listening to music you enjoy decreases levels of the stress hormone cortisol in your body, which counteracts the effects of chronic stress. And this is an important finding since stress causes 60% of all our illnesses and disease. And one study showed that if people actively participated in making music by playing various percussion instruments and singing, their immune system was boosted even more than if they passively listened. Now, here are some of the other key benefits. So 45 minutes of relaxing music before bed improves sleep. And as we know, depression and insomnia are keen bedfellows. If you want to lose weight, well, research at Georgia Tech University showed that softening the lighting and music while people ate led them to consume fewer calories and enjoy their meals more. If you're looking for ways to curb your appetite, try dimming the lights and listening to soft music the next time you sit down for a meal. And you want to be a safer driver? Well, a study in the Netherlands found that listening to music can positively impact your mood while driving, which can lead to safer behavior than not listening to music. And the next time you feel frustrated in traffic, turn up the tunes to improve your state of mind. It won't hurt your driving performance. It may even help you drive more safely. And do you want to learn more? Well, research has discovered that music can help you learn and recall information better, but it depends on how much you like the music and whether or not you're a musician. Subjects memorized Japanese characters while listening to music that either seemed positive or neutral to them. The results showed that participants who were musicians learned better with natural music, but tested better when pleasurable music was playing. Non-musicians, on the other hand, learned better with positive music, but tested better with neutral music. And do you want to have a quicker recovery from surgery? Well, research has found that listening to relaxing music before surgery decreases anxiety. And in fact, it's even more effective than being orally administered midazolam, a medication often used to help pre-op patients feel sleepy. But also it has nasty side effects such as coughing and vomiting. Now, other studies show that listening to soothing music while resting in bed after open heart surgery increases relaxation, which is vital for post-op open heart surgery patients. So where can music not be a great asset? Well, I know a song that will get on your nerves. Now, we've all heard of earworms, that piece of music that gets in your brain and won't go away. Well, this is actually a medical condition. The brain hangs on to familiar music to create earworms, or involuntary musical imagery, as they are scientifically known. And a few studies have held at least some of the answers to this. First of all, common earworms seem to share some features. They're songs you've heard a lot, which may be why current radio hits tend to dominate top 10 earworm lists. They often have repetitive notes or unexpected intervals in timing. They also have distinct rhythms and pitch patterns. Now, anybody who remembers Saturday Night by Whigfield, everyone remembers the duck quack at the start and can usually recognize the song just by that snapshot, and sometimes follow it by being stuck quacking in your brain for the rest of the day. And Lady Gaga, for some reason, is a major contributor to earworms, according to a study by Kelly Jakubowski, who's a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Music at Durham University. And she's made it her business to be plagued by earworms. She says there is a correlation between pitch of notes and length of notes, and smaller variances in pitch change result in an earworm. And think about Disney's It's a Small World or the Bond theme. And earworms can show up in almost any situation, and they aren't necessarily a bad thing. So in the documentary Touching the Void, mountaineer Joe Simpson found himself injured and stranded on a remote Peruvian mountain following a climbing accident. He was plagued by Boney M's Brown Girl in the Ring. And he quoted, "It went on for hours and hours. I was thinking, bloody hell, I'm going to die to Boney M." Now, Baroque music such as Bach, Albinoni, and as mentioned before, Mozart, are incredibly good for focus and concentration. And one of the reasons is the Baroque music tends to be at a very low beat per minute, approximately 60 to 70, which is the average resting heart rate. So by listening to music at that BPM, or beats per minute, you're actually asking your body to fall in line with that external stimulus, as well as release dopamine and reduce cortisol. And likewise, if you want to get motivated or have a beat that gets you moving, listen to something faster. It's hence the reason why gyms pump out dance music when you're there. The first tracks on my playlist is always Mr. Blue Sky, because I know that it's a great running speed for me to keep to. And when I ran my first half marathon, it was the first track I trained to. I knew if I hear those first piano chords marching along, that it gets me going. The music got me training. The training meant that I could complete a half marathon. And it's habits like these that stack up to an overall goal of becoming and keeping fit. A study called The Effect of Music Movement Synchrony on Exercise Oxygen Consumption, or to put it more succinctly, how music affects energy oxygen consumption. It found that cyclists who pedaled along to music used 7% less oxygen than those who didn't use music to match their pace. Now, according to the study, which was published in the Scientific American, a song's beats per minute has an effect on motivation. The most recent research suggests that a ceiling effect occurs around 145 BPM. Anything higher does not seem to contribute much additional motivation, the Scientific American wrote. On occasion, the speed and flow of the lyrics supersede the underlying beat. Some people work out to rap songs, for example, with dense, swiftly spoken lyrics overlaid on a relatively mellow melody. Spotify has come to similar conclusions, and a couple of years ago debuted Spotify Running in response to those findings, adding technology to its platform that tracks a runner's pace and curates a playlist of songs that match that pace. Now, also don't forget that walking is one of the best forms of exercise, and if you want a good walk, then look out for music with a marching theme. Not necessarily classical. Think Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson, or if you want a funky strut, then of course it has to be Saturday Night Fever by the Bee Gees. Physical exercise is one of the most important parts of our lives, yet there's a recognized lack of it, according to scientists and governments trying to battle the obesity risks. Now, we encourage our children to do it, but how often do we set the example? And music can be the key to getting off the sofa, out the door and down the road, if you just had the right music, right? Well, we can all find our motivational piece, and you can find some examples on the shared playlist at the end of the webinar. But you know what you like, grab it, close your eyes, imagine yourself doing the exercise you need to. One of my mantras is, if we can see it, we can believe it. Now, interestingly, a study was done by the American Olympic psychology team on what happens to the muscles under the same conditions, but when a race is only visualized. What's the difference? Virtually none. The same muscles fired when the athletes were mentally running the race as to when they actually ran the race. Obviously, there was no huge oxygen intake, but the same muscles fired when they imagined running the race. Now, this mental preparation and visualization is used to great advantage, and it was quickly adopted by all countries and acknowledged that mentally winning the race was just as important as physically winning. So when you anchor that feeling of commitment and motivation to music as your motivator, and you build the habits around exercise, you can achieve long-lasting success in performing exercise. Now, the next evolution in mind music is listening to music that has binaural beats incorporated. And this is nothing new. In 1837, Willem Dove discovered that listening to certain frequencies could actually induce certain states of mind. The closer the frequencies, the more relaxed. The greater frequencies created focus and motivation. And we now know that these frequencies relate to how the brain processes day-to-day activity and is also linked with hypnotic states of the brain. Our minds, as we know, are incredibly powerful, and we are just beginning to scratch the surface of what they are capable of. So imagine being in the cinema with 200 other people when the Star Wars credits roll and the blaster trumpets blare out of the speakers. The dopamine roller coaster is chilling to the bone, especially when that emotion is being experienced as a 6-year-old boy. For me, it takes me back instantly to that time. Even listening to the 20th century Fox music gives me an expectation that the Star Wars theme will be coming next. Now, film scores can take us to the heights of ecstasy and to the depths of fear. And if you think about it, it's a huge responsibility for the composer. They have to make what fits on screen with their music, or vice versa, depending on how the editing is going. 200 people need to be moved to tears at exactly the same time, or laugh at the same time, and even sing along. And not only is it an art form, it's an exact science as well. Incidental and score music plays such a huge part in filmmaking. The scores are not just an accompaniment, but are now a core element to the film. Mike Oldfield's tubular bass is so synonymous with The Exorcist that it is instantly recognizable as so, unless you happen to be a huge Mike Oldfield fan. Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams will always be Robin Hood. And then talk about earworms, there's two right there. And because of music's ability to take us on the auditory journey, we all feel emotion when we hear certain pieces of music. The twang of the James Bond theme, the first few notes of Jaws, which still brings shivers to my spine, and the music box melody of Harry Potter are all related to the emotions we feel as we hear, the sights we see, and the memories we forge. In fact, soundtracks like The Greatest Showman, Frozen, or whichever latest Disney film is out, are still topping the charts even after the first soundtrack was released. Excuse me, in 1938, which was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Excuse me, just having a coughing fit. Now, I was due to give a big presentation. God, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just going to have a cough. Hang on a second. I was oh, I was due to give a big presentation to the company, and I was so nervous. Even thinking about it made me feel nervous. I knew this was crazy to feel like this, and I knew that the other people in that space would know that. I breathed, went inside, and played in my mind the theme Superman. I did an exercise called Brilliant Squared, whereby you imagine a huge imaginary square of your favorite color, and standing in the middle of it is a super confident version of yourself. And when you're ready, you step into the square. In my case, with a huge hug and a smile from that confident person inside, or whilst playing Superman theme. I did this 5 or 6 times and found that it made me confident and calm. And I even felt bulletproof. I never felt so in control in the presentation. Now, by putting my body into a state of confidence and calmness, I was in control. Now, the power of music and visualization together made me powerful. The presentation went so well, they asked me to speak regularly to clients with a handy glass of water, obviously, and the board. So this is now my anchor for presenting. I tap into that success for every presentation. Oh. So when I'm feeling demotivated, I listen to Mr. Blue Skies. I know it makes me want to go out running, and that's my cue for feeling motivated. If I want to concentrate, then I have a concentration playlist that contains binaural beats to increase my focus. I get more work done in an hour than I do in a morning without it. So find good motivators and create good habits around them. Well, firstly, let me apologize for all the coughing. I think I've just about got my voice back. Anyway, I hope you've gained some insight and interest in why music is so evocative and emotional to us. And most importantly, how you can use it to transform your own state. We've just discovered the first few bars of how music affects us emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And as you can imagine, the applications are endless. So, this is the reason I use music for relaxation and hypnotherapy in my coaching, as your physical state can help your subconscious mind to know what it needs. It's the conductor in the orchestra of your life. Lead it, don't let it lead you. Jim Rohn, who was a hero of mine, said music has the power to move the spirit in ways that most things do not. I strongly encourage you to spend some time regularly listening to music that will strengthen your spirit. Many of the classics fit this, and there are many good artists today who help us focus on the inner spiritual life through excellent music. Now, if you found this webinar interesting, then please share it. If you get on replay and you missed it, then apologies, but you can pick it up from my website. You will be able to pick it up from my website very soon. And I hope you got a few insights. And so if there are any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up there for the evening. No? Okay, good. Great. Okay, well, everyone have a good evening and thanks for listening. Okay, cheers.